Maria Anderson had lived alone in her suburban home for nearly 2 decades. At 70, she valued order the way some people clung to faith. It was a habit forged in the army, where she had spent years as a nurse tending to young men torn apart by battles they had never asked for. Discipline, routine, and vigilance had kept her alive back then, and those same qualities kept her steady now. Every drawer in her kitchen had a label. Every bill was filed in chronological order. Every password was written, in careful cursive, on a sheet of paper locked in her desk. That afternoon the house was unusually quiet. A faint hum of cicadas drifted through the open window, and the old clock on the wall ticked with military precision. Maria poured herself a cup of coffee, opened her tablet, and tapped the security app. She had insisted on repairing the cameras last week, after months of telling herself she was being paranoid. Better to be safe than sorry, she had muttered to the repairman. The screen lit up. For a moment, the feed showed nothing more than her living room, the beige sofa, the oak coffee table, the framed photograph of her in uniform holding a baby boy, her son Kyle, on the day she came home from overseas. The sight warmed her chest, as it always did. Then movement caught her eye. Kyle Anderson, now 38 years old, stood at that very coffee table. His hair, once sun-kissed and thick, had thinned under the weight of failed jobs and restless nights. Beside him was his wife, Victoria Roberts, 35, with her sharp cheekbones and sharper tongue. They thought the house was empty. They thought no one could see them. Maria froze as she watched them rifling through a folder of documents. Kyle's hands shook slightly as he spread out property tax receipts and the deed to the house. Victoria leaned over, her manicured finger tapping the bold letters that spelled Maria Anderson, owner. "This is it," Victoria whispered, her voice clipped with urgency. "Gerald Martin says he can handle the paperwork. For $8,000, we'll walk away with more than $250,000. All we need is her signature or a passable copy." Kyle rubbed his temples. "She's meticulous, Vic. She notices everything, if she even suspects." "She's 70, Victoria cut in, her tone scornful. "She second-guesses herself all the time. We push the power of attorney, slip the updated will under her pen, and she won't question it. By Friday, this house is ours." Maria's breath caught in her throat. Her own son. The boy she had raised after her husband walked out, the boy whose scraped knees she had bandaged, whose nightmares she had soothed. The soldier in her had braced for bullets and blood, but nothing could have prepared her for the sight of Kyle plotting to erase her life's work. She pressed a trembling hand against the table. Her coffee cooled untouched. Memories rushed forward, long nights in the military hospital, the cries of wounded soldiers, her promise to always protect those who could not protect themselves. She had thought her fight ended when she came home, but betrayal, it seemed, was a new kind of battlefield. On the screen, Victoria gathered the papers and shoved them back into the folder. "Remember," she hissed, no hesitation. "If she resists, we'll tell her she's confused. We'll call it early dementia. Gerald has friends in the county office. Once the deed is filed, it's done." Kyle nodded, but his face betrayed a flicker of shame. He glanced at the framed photograph on the wall, the one of Maria in uniform, smiling proudly with him in her arms. For a heartbeat, Maria thought she saw the boy she remembered. But then Victoria's hand closed over his, and the softness disappeared. Maria leaned back in her chair, her heart pounding with the rhythm of a drumline. She was not just a 70-year-old widow. She was a veteran, a survivor, a woman who had stitched broken bodies under mortar fire and carried stretchers through dust and blood. If she had endured that, she could endure this. She closed the tablet slowly, carefully, as though the house itself might hear. Her voice, steady despite the storm in her chest, slipped into the quiet kitchen. "They don't know I've seen everything," she whispered, "and I am not the helpless woman they think I am." The clock ticked on, marking the beginning of a new kind of war, one not fought on foreign soil, but in the very heart of her own family. Maria barely slept that night. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, the faint shadows of tree branches swaying across the walls like restless spirits. Her mind replayed the images from the camera again and again: Kyle's uneasy posture, Victoria's hard eyes, the folder spread wide on the table. Every detail cut deeper than a scalpel. By morning, she had composed herself. Years in the army had taught her one thing above all: you never show weakness to an enemy. And right now, heartbreak aside, that was how she had to think of them, her son and his wife, not as family, but as adversaries inside her own perimeter. The front door creaked open mid-morning. Kyle's voice echoed down the hall, too casual, too bright. "Mom, you up?" Maria sat in her armchair, coffee steaming beside her, the morning paper folded neatly on her lap. "I've been up since 6, she answered evenly. "Old habits." Kyle walked in with a hesitant smile. Victoria trailed behind, her perfume arriving a half-second before her sharp tone. "Maria, we were just talking. There are some papers we'd like you to look over. Nothing complicated, just some updates to keep things simple for everyone." Maria raised an eyebrow. "Updates?" Victoria slipped into a chair without waiting to be invited. She pulled a sleek folder from her bag. "Yes, you know how confusing legal matters can get as people age. This is just a power of attorney, so Kyle can handle things if you ever get too tired to keep track of all the details." Maria set her paper aside, her fingers steady. "I've kept track of details my whole life, Victoria. It's sort of my specialty." A flicker crossed Kyle's face, but Victoria pressed forward, her smile sugar-coated and poisonous. "Of course, you've done wonderfully. But it's natural at 70 to forget things now and then. Everyone does. Why not have peace of mind knowing Kyle can step in?" Maria let silence stretch. She watched her son fidget under her gaze. She thought of how she used to bandage his hands when he scraped them climbing trees, how he would look up at her with wide eyes, trusting she could fix anything. Now he wouldn't even meet her stare. "I'm not sure I'm ready to hand over that kind of control," Maria finally said. Victoria's smile tightened. "Maria, please don't be stubborn. It's just paperwork. Nothing will change for you day to day. You'll still live here. You'll still make your own choices. This is just insurance." "Insurance for who?" Maria asked softly. Kyle cleared his throat. "Mom, you've said yourself you get overwhelmed with all the forms, the bills, the property tax. Why not let me carry that burden? It would be easier for everyone." Maria heard the practiced cadence in his voice. He was parroting Victoria, trying to sound reasonable, even noble. She wanted to believe him, but the image of him spreading her deed across the table like a blueprint for theft burned behind her eyes. "I carried stretchers through field hospitals when I was 20, Maria said, her tone sharpening. "I managed inventories of morphine and penicillin under mortar fire. I think I can handle a water bill." For a moment, silence reigned. Kyle's face flushed. Victoria tapped her nails against the folder, a staccato of impatience. "Confusion is normal at your age," Victoria said finally, each word slow and deliberate, like a blade pressed against skin. "You might not even realize when you've forgotten something important. That's why this is necessary." The words landed like shrapnel. Gaslighting, that was the strategy. Make her doubt her memory, her competence, her own mind. But Maria was no stranger to psychological warfare. She had seen young soldiers unravel from whispers of failure, and she had learned how to hold the line. She stood slowly, letting the silence stretch until even the clock seemed to hush. "Leave the papers on the table," she said. "I'll read them when I'm ready." Victoria's eyes narrowed. "It's best to sign while it's fresh. No sense dragging it out." Maria gave a thin smile. "And no sense rushing it either." Kyle sighed, gathering the folder back into his arms. "We'll come back tomorrow. Maybe after you've had time to think." They left in a rustle of perfume and frustration. The door clicked shut, and Maria's hands trembled for the first time since she had picked up a scalpel in the field hospital all those decades ago. But she didn't crumble. She walked to her desk, opened a fresh notebook, and wrote in neat block letters across the first page. Day 1. Attempted coercion. Power of attorney papers. Gaslighting language. She underlined the words twice. Then she set down her pen, straightened her back, and whispered, "If they think I'll surrender, they don't know me at all." The next week unfolded like a siege. Every morning Maria woke with the same tightness in her chest, bracing for the knock at the door, the clipped voice, the folder of lies. She had survived deployments overseas, rationing medicine when supplies were scarce, but this was different. This was war inside her own home. Kyle and Victoria escalated their tactics with the precision of people who thought they were clever. One day it was the groceries. Maria discovered the pantry suspiciously bare of the staples she always kept: coffee beans, rice, oatmeal. She knew she had stocked them herself. When she asked, Victoria shrugged and said, "Maybe you forgot. Don't worry, I'll handle the shopping from now on." The following day, Maria's car keys disappeared. Kyle appeared sheepish when she confronted him. "Mom, it's just safer if you don't drive so much. The roads are busy and, well, you get distracted sometimes." He dangled the keys in his hand like a father catching a child sneaking out. "We'll drive you wherever you need to go." Maria felt her blood simmer. She had driven ambulances under blackout orders, headlights off, navigating by memory and instinct. And now her own son was telling her she wasn't fit to drive to the grocery store? By Thursday, the insurance bill arrived. Maria sat at her desk, sorting the envelopes, when she saw the letter-stamped coverage change. She read it twice, her pulse rising. Her supplemental health insurance, the one she had paid into for years, had been canceled. The notice was signed with Kyle's name. When she confronted him, his face hardened. "It was too expensive, Mom. You don't need all that coverage. We'll save money this way." "Save money for who?" Maria demanded. "For the family," Victoria cut in smoothly. "It's about being practical. We can't waste $500 a month on something you probably won't even use." Maria stared at them, fury bubbling beneath her calm surface. "I spent years patching up soldiers with bandages and morphine that cost more than your precious $500. Don't tell me what's worth it." Victoria's smile never faltered. "You're tired, Maria. Why don't you let us take care of things? Isn't that what family is for?" Maria bit back the words clawing at her throat. She recognized the strategy. Starve her resources, limit her independence, make her doubt her ability to survive alone. It was psychological warfare, the same kind she had witnessed in young men broken by fear and deprivation. She would not let herself fracture. That night, Maria opened her notebook again. Day 5. Restriction of groceries. Car keys confiscated. Insurance canceled. Gaslighting continued. She wrote every word with the precision of a field report. The notebook steadied her, reminded her of who she was, a woman trained to observe, record, and act. But beneath the discipline, her heart ached. This was her son, the boy she had carried on her shoulders at parades, the boy who once cried when she left for deployment. How had he grown into a man willing to strip her life piece by piece? At dinner the following evening, Kyle tried a softer approach. He set a plate of chicken and potatoes before her and sat across the table, his eyes weary. "Mom, we're just trying to make things easier. You've done so much for me. Let me do something for you now." Maria met his gaze, her fork poised in her hand. "Taking away my independence isn't doing something for me. It's doing something to me." Kyle flinched, but said nothing. Victoria reached across the table, touching his hand like she owned him. "She'll understand in time," she murmured. Maria forced herself to smile faintly, concealing the storm raging inside her. "Perhaps I will," she said. But as she cleared her plate, she knew the truth. Their siege was tightening. And if she didn't act soon, she would be the one under their control. Saturday dawned with a heavy stillness, the kind Maria remembered from field tents before an ambush. She brewed coffee, inhaling the bitter steam, trying to anchor herself. But the walls of her own home felt foreign now, like enemy territory disguised in familiar wallpaper. Kyle and Victoria were relentless. That morning they brought another folder, thicker than the last. Kyle placed it on the kitchen table with exaggerated care, as if handling explosives. "Mom," he began, his voice wrapped in false tenderness. "We've been talking with a lawyer. There are some documents we need you to sign, just routine things. Medical authorizations, financial safeguards, standard stuff." Maria opened the folder slowly, scanning the pages. Her trained eyes caught words that snapped like tripwires. Transfer, irrevocable power, property rights. Her stomach turned. "I don't understand all of this," she said deliberately, feigning confusion. "Could you explain it to me slowly?" Victoria's eyes narrowed, her patience fraying. "Maria, it's legal jargon. It would take days for you to read through. Just trust us." "Trust you?" Maria murmured. "Like I trusted you with my insurance?" Kyle leaned forward, his smile tight. "This isn't the same. These papers protect you. If something happened, we'd be able to act quickly. Isn't that what you want?" Maria laid the papers flat on the table, her hands steady. "What I want is to live without being treated like a helpless patient." Kyle's jaw clenched. For a moment, Maria saw the boy he once was, the boy who once cried when she left for deployment. But the softness vanished as quickly as it came. Victoria cut in sharply. "You're being unreasonable. Everyone your age prepares for the future. If you won't sign willingly, you'll make it harder on all of us." The words hung in the air like a threat. Maria forced herself to breathe evenly, her years of training keeping her expression calm. She would not give them the satisfaction of seeing her crack. Later that afternoon, Maria retreated to her bedroom. She sat at her desk, staring at the stack of papers, her notebook open beside her. Day 7. They introduced fraudulent documents, pressured me to sign, emotional manipulation, escalating. But as she wrote, a tremor of doubt flickered through her. What if they were right? What if her memory was slipping? Sometimes she misplaced dates, sometimes names escaped her. The thought gnawed at her like a hidden infection. She clasped her hands together, whispering into the silence. No, I know what I saw. I know what I heard. Still, the seed of doubt lingered. Could a mind under siege betray itself? At dinner that evening, Victoria played a new role. She set the table with candles, poured Maria's wine, and spoke in syrupy tones. We only want what's best for you. Isn't that what family is supposed to do? Maria smiled faintly, though inside her chest ached. Family, she repeated. I remember when that word meant something else. Victoria's eyes hardened. Sign the papers tomorrow, Maria. Don't drag this out. Maria excused herself early, climbing the stairs slowly, her legs heavy, but her resolve growing stronger. In her room, she reached for her phone and typed a message to an old contact, Gerald Anderson, a retired detective she had once treated in a military hospital decades earlier. She hesitated before hitting send. Could she really bring outsiders into this? The memory of Kyle's voice cut through her hesitation. We'll put her somewhere smaller. A one-bedroom will be enough for her final years. Maria pressed send. Sunday morning, Maria rose before dawn. Years of military discipline had trained her body to wake at the slightest sound, and now her instincts hummed with urgency. She brewed her coffee in silence, listening to the creaks of the house. Kyle and Victoria were still asleep. Her phone buzzed with a reply. Gerald Anderson, retired detective, widowed, and one of the few people Maria still trusted. I'll come by this afternoon. Don't sign anything. Keep calm. We'll talk. Maria felt a weight lift from her chest. She wasn't alone anymore. She spent the morning documenting everything. Her notebook had become her weapon: dates, times, direct quotes. She even photographed the forged documents with her phone, emailing the images to a private account she had created the night before. Redundancy saves lives, she reminded herself. It had been true in combat zones. It was true now. At noon, Kyle and Victoria emerged, dressed casually, acting as if nothing were wrong. Victoria cooked bacon and eggs, humming cheerfully. Kyle kissed Maria's cheek as though the last week had never happened. Big day today, Mom, he said, sliding into the chair across from her. We'll go over the papers again after lunch. Then it'll be done, and you won't have to worry anymore. Maria forced a smile. Of course, dear. After lunch. Inside, she counted the hours until Gerald arrived. By 2:00, the doorbell rang. Kyle frowned. Expecting someone? Just a neighbor, Maria said casually, moving to the door. Gerald stood there in a plain jacket, his gray hair trimmed short, his eyes sharp as ever. He carried himself with the quiet authority of a man who had once stared criminals in the eye. Maria, he greeted warmly, hugging her briefly. I thought I'd check in. Kyle's expression tightened, but he extended his hand. Kyle Roberts, Maria's son. Gerald Anderson, the detective replied smoothly. Old friend of your mother's. We go way back. Victoria appeared at Kyle's shoulder, her smile brittle. It's nice of you to visit. Maria's been under some stress lately. Gerald studied her for a beat, then nodded. That's so. Well, stress can do funny things, but it can also sharpen your instincts. Maria guided Gerald to the living room. Kyle and Victoria followed reluctantly, hovering like guards. Over tea, Maria kept her voice calm but steady. Gerald, I've been pressured to sign documents I don't understand. My insurance was canceled, my car keys were taken, and I believe they're working with a lawyer who isn't legitimate. Kyle flushed red. Mom, that's ridiculous. Gerald, she's been imagining things. We're just trying to protect her. Gerald's gaze pinned Kyle like a pinned insect. Protect her? Or protect her assets? Victoria bristled. That's insulting. We've been living here to help her. She's confused. Gerald leaned back, unshaken. Funny. In my years on the force, whenever someone cried confusion, it usually meant they didn't want the truth examined too closely. Maria's heart swelled with quiet vindication. When Kyle and Victoria finally excused themselves to the kitchen, Gerald lowered his voice. "You're right to call me. I've seen this pattern before: financial abuse of elders, manipulation, forced signatures. It's more common than people think." "What do I do?" Maria whispered. "First, don't sign a thing. Second, let's set up a way to record their conversations. If they're conspiring, we'll catch it. Evidence is your best shield." Maria nodded, her resolve hardening. "I already started. Notes, dates, photos." Gerald smiled approvingly. "Good soldier. We'll get you through this." By the time he left, Maria felt something she hadn't felt in weeks: control. She wasn't a cornered victim anymore. She was preparing her counterattack. That night, Kyle pressed her again. "Mom, about the papers." Maria looked at him squarely, her voice even. "I'll decide when I'm ready, not before." For the first time, Kyle didn't push. But the flicker of anger in his eyes told Maria everything. He knew the battle had shifted. Monday began with a smile that felt wrong. Kyle greeted Maria with exaggerated cheer, placing a steaming cup of coffee in front of her. "Morning, Mom. Hope you slept well. Big day today, we'll finally get those documents signed." Maria wrapped her hands around the cup, hiding the tremor in her fingers. "We'll see," she said softly. Inside, her mind was racing. Gerald had promised to return with equipment-discrete devices that could capture voices as clearly as confessionals. But he had also warned her, "Play along. Don't let them suspect you're onto them. The more they talk, the stronger your case becomes." By mid-morning, Maria slipped into her bedroom under the pretense of resting. She opened her nightstand drawer, where Gerald had left a small device the evening before. A pin-sized microphone, already synced to a recorder hidden in her closet. She adjusted it inside her blouse, her pulse quickening. For the first time, she felt armed. When she returned to the kitchen, Kyle and Victoria were already waiting. The papers were spread across the table again, neatly aligned, pens placed with surgical precision. Victoria smiled, her lipstick a shade too sharp. "Maria, let's not drag this out. The sooner you sign, the sooner we can all breathe easier." Maria sat slowly, her notebook tucked beneath her arm. She flipped it open and clicked her pen, her soldier's discipline in full control. "Explain it to me, line by line. If it's so simple, there's no harm in teaching me." Kyle exhaled sharply, patience thinning. "Mom, we've been over this." "Then you should have no trouble repeating it," Maria interrupted, her tone firm. For the next 20 minutes they circled like vultures disguised as caretakers. Victoria twisted her words, calling the power of attorney clause a precaution, the property transfer a standard update. Kyle echoed her, softening each demand with the word protection. Maria kept her face calm, nodding, asking questions, pretending to hesitate. But inside, every word etched itself into her memory and into Gerald's recorder. Finally, Victoria's mask cracked. She pushed the pen toward Maria. "Enough delays. Sign it, or we'll have to explore other options." Maria's hand hovered above the paper, fingers steady though her heart hammered. She dropped the pen back on the table. "Other options?" Kyle's jaw tightened. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be." Before Maria could reply, the doorbell rang. The sound shattered the tension like glass. Kyle muttered under his breath and strode to answer it. Gerald stepped inside, his presence filling the room with quiet authority. "Afternoon," he said casually, glancing at the table. "Looks like a serious meeting." Victoria's face paled. "We didn't invite you." Gerald ignored her, turning to Maria. "Just checking in on my old friend. Thought I'd bring some fresh muffins." He placed a paper bag on the counter, the smell of blueberries wafting through the kitchen. Maria smiled faintly. "That's kind of you." Kyle bristled. "We were in the middle of private family business." "Family business has a way of turning criminal if you're not careful," Gerald replied smoothly. His gaze locked on Kyle's, unflinching. "You wouldn't believe how often I saw that in my line of work." Victoria scoffed, but her hands fidgeted with the papers. "You don't know what you're talking about." "Oh, I know more than you think," Gerald said. Then, turning to Maria, his voice softened. "You don't have to decide anything today. Take your time. Read carefully. And if you'd like, I can recommend a lawyer who specializes in elder rights." Kyle's fist clenched against the table. "She doesn't need another lawyer. We already have one." "Mr. Evans, wasn't it?" Gerald asked mildly. Interesting fellow. That name keeps showing up in reports about forgery cases. Curious coincidence. Silence fell heavy in the room. Maria felt a rush of relief mixed with fear. Gerald was pushing, but maybe too far. Victoria broke it first, her voice cold. "Maria, don't let outsiders poison your mind. We're your family. Who do you trust more, us or a stranger?" Maria straightened, her voice calm but firm. "I trust the truth, and the truth doesn't need to be rushed or hidden." The papers sat untouched between them. The silence that followed wasn't defeat, but it wasn't victory either. The trap had tightened. Both sides knew the war was no longer hidden. That night, Maria locked her bedroom door and replayed the recording from her blouse microphone. Their voices were clear, undeniable. "Sign it, or we'll have to explore other options. Proof of pressure, proof of intent." Her chest swelled with grim satisfaction. But when she lay down to sleep, staring at the ceiling, one thought kept gnawing at her. Kyle had once held her hand through hospital corridors when she came home from deployment with nightmares. He had once been her anchor. Now he was her enemy. Maria whispered into the dark, "I won't let you break me." Tuesday morning arrived with a sky the color of steel. Maria sat at the kitchen table, her notebook open, her coffee untouched. She knew the moment was coming. The air in the house felt heavy, like the charged silence before a storm. Kyle entered first, his steps deliberate, his face strained. Victoria followed, her eyes sharp, lips pressed into a thin line. They didn't bother with small talk this time. Instead, Kyle dropped the folder onto the table with a thud. "Mom," he said, his voice taut, "this is the last time we'll ask nicely. Sign the papers." Maria looked at him steadily. "And if I don't?" Victoria crossed her arms, her tone icy. "Then we'll do what's necessary. You can't fight us forever. We know people who can make this official without your signature." Maria's chest tightened, but she didn't flinch. "Forgery is still a crime, last I checked." Kyle's face darkened. "Stop acting like you're some soldier still fighting battles. You're 70 years old, living alone. You need us. Without us, you have nothing." Maria leaned forward, her eyes burning. "Nothing? I've survived war zones, Kyle. I've survived nights filled with mortars and mornings with nothing but canned beans to keep me alive. Don't tell me I have nothing." Victoria slammed her hand on the table. "Enough of the dramatics. You'll sign, or we'll take control another way. Medical reports, legal maneuvers will have you declared unfit. Do you really want strangers deciding your future instead of your own son?" The words cut deep. Maria felt a pang of grief, but anger steadied her. "My own son is the one trying to strip me of my dignity. Strangers couldn't do worse." Kyle's composure cracked. His voice rose, sharp and ugly. "You think you're so clever, hiding notes, pretending you're stronger than you are. But we've been patient long enough. You'll either hand this house over willingly, or we'll force it." Maria let the silence stretch, then reached into her blouse. Slowly, she pulled out the tiny microphone Gerald had given her and placed it on the table. The red light blinked softly. Kyle froze. Victoria's eyes widened, panic flashing before she covered it with a sneer. "You're bluffing." Maria's voice was calm, deliberate, every word cutting like a blade. "No bluff. Every word you just said is recorded. Every threat, every plan. You've already confessed." Kyle's face drained of color. "I was a combat nurse," Maria interrupted. "I learned how to prepare for every worst-case scenario. Did you really think I'd let you corner me without a plan?" Victoria recovered first, her voice dripping venom. "Even if you have recordings, no one will believe you. You're old, forgetful. We'll tell them you're paranoid, that you imagined it all." Maria opened her notebook, flipping to the latest page. Dates, times, direct quotes. Cross-checked with your behavior. "And Gerald Anderson, retired detective, has copies of everything. Even if you destroy this, the truth is already safe." Kyle slumped into a chair, running his hands through his hair. For the first time, he looked less like a schemer and more like a frightened child. But the pity Maria once felt was gone. Victoria, however, wasn't done. She leaned across the table, her smile twisted. "So you think you've won? You'll ruin your own son's life for the sake of pride? Over a house?" Maria's gaze sharpened. "This isn't about pride. It's about survival. You tried to erase me before I was even gone. And that house, every brick of it was built on my sacrifices. It's not yours to steal. For a long moment, the kitchen was silent except for the faint hum of the refrigerator. Then Maria stood, her spine straight, her voice steady. "I won't sign. I will never sign. And now, the world will know exactly what you've tried to do." Kyle looked at her with eyes full of something between hatred and despair. "You'll regret this," he muttered. Maria shook her head. "No, Kyle. The only regret here is mine for believing love would stop you from becoming the man you've become." The words hung in the air like a verdict. The confrontation was over, but the war was not. Maria knew the final strike was coming, and she was ready. The day of reckoning came on a Thursday morning. Maria had risen early, her ritual of brewing coffee steadier than her pulse. She knew Gerald and the authorities would arrive soon, but the hours stretched long, heavy with anticipation. Kyle and Victoria lingered in the kitchen, whispering, casting wary glances at her. They sensed something had shifted but didn't yet know how deep their mistake ran. By mid-morning, a knock at the door shattered the silence. Gerald entered first, his calm presence like a shield. Behind him came two uniformed officers and a woman in a dark suit, an attorney specializing in elder protection. Victoria stiffened. "What is this?" Maria's voice was steady. "This is the end of your game." The attorney placed a folder on the table. "We have recordings, written documentation, and testimony that establish a pattern of attempted fraud, coercion, and elder abuse." Kyle's face blanched. "You can't be serious. She's confused. She imagines things." Gerald cut him off, his tone razor sharp. "No, son, what's on these recordings isn't imagination. It's your voice, threatening, conspiring, planning forgery, and now it's evidence." One of the officers stepped forward, reading their rights as handcuffs clicked around Kyle's wrists. Victoria tried to bolt, but Gerald blocked her path with a calm shake of his head. She hissed curses as the second officer restrained her. Maria stood back, her heart heavy but resolute. Watching her son bound in iron was like watching a wound reopen, but she didn't falter. Kyle turned toward her, his voice raw. "Mom, please, I'm your son. Are you really going to destroy me over money?" Maria's eyes glistened, but her voice did not break. "No, Kyle, I didn't destroy you. You destroyed yourself when you chose greed over family, when you saw me as an obstacle instead of your mother." The attorney gathered the forged documents from the table, sliding them into evidence bags. "This will hold up in court. You'll be safe now, Mrs. Gagnon." Safe. The word felt strange, fragile. For months, Maria had lived as if in hostile territory. Now, for the first time, she could breathe without watching her back. When the officers led Kyle and Victoria out, their protests fading into the distance, Gerald stayed behind. He placed a hand on Maria's shoulder. "You did the hardest thing a mother can do, choose truth over blind loyalty." Maria nodded, tears sliding silently down her cheeks. "I raised him alone. I thought love would be enough." Gerald's voice was gentle. "Love can build, but it can't fix what someone chooses to break." The house felt eerily quiet once they were gone. Maria walked into the living room, running her fingers over the worn fabric of the sofa where Kyle once curled beside her as a boy. Memories flooded her, the scraped knees, the bedtime stories, the laughter. They pressed against her heart like shards of glass. But there was something else too. Relief, a clarity she hadn't felt in years. She was still here. Her dignity, her independence, her home, they were hers again. Weeks later, the legal process unfolded quickly. With Gerald's help, Maria secured protective orders. Kyle and Victoria pled guilty to avoid a harsher sentence. They agreed to abandon any claim on her property and to complete rehabilitation programs. Neighbors who had once waved politely now stopped by with casseroles, offering warmth and quiet solidarity. Maria found herself surrounded by a chosen family people who respected her strength instead of trying to dismantle it. On a crisp autumn evening, Maria sat on her porch with Gerald, sipping tea as the sky blushed orange. She felt the ache of betrayal still lingering, but it no longer defined her. "I've learned something," she said softly. "What's that?" Gerald asked. "That family isn't about blood or names. It's about respect, about honesty, about love that doesn't come with conditions." Gerald nodded. "And you've got that now. Maybe not from where you expected, but you've got it." Maria smiled faintly, her gaze fixed on the horizon. She had walked through fire and come out scarred but unbroken. For 70 years, she had carried others, soldiers, patients, her son. Now, finally, she carried only herself. and for the years she had left, that was enough.